May 1989, pre-dawn, a Soviet air base in Soviet Georgia. A man hauls himself one-handed into the cockpit of a frontline fighter jet because his other arm no longer works. Blood is running out of a hole punched clean through his right forearm, pooling warm inside his flight glove. Canvas covers are still strapped over parts of the aircraft. Somewhere behind him lies a guard he just shot, a man he never wanted to hurt. He has maybe 4 minutes before an armed response team reaches the flight line. He reaches up with his good hand and hits the starter. A dry click. Nothing. He hit it again. Click. The engine is dead. This man is one of the finest fighters pilots the Soviet Union has ever produced, the elite of the elite, trained on its newest and most secret jet. He spent months building a plan so carefully it should have worked perfectly. And every single piece of it has gone wrong. How does the best of the best end up bleeding to death in a stolen jet that will not start? And why was stealing this aircraft the only way to escape without becoming a murderer? To understand the man in that cockpit, you must go back to the day a fellow officer handed him a stack of photographs. His name is Aleksandr Zuyev. He is born poor, a kid from the Volga with nothing, and he claws his way up through the brutal Soviet aviation system on pure talent until he reaches the very top. He became a fighter pilot, not just any fighter pilots. He flies the MiG-29, the Fulcrum, the Soviet Union's newest, deadliest, most secret jet, the aircraft the West is desperate to get its hands on. And for years, Aleksandr Zuyev believes he is a true son of the Soviet Union, proud to defend it, certain that the system that raised a poor boy into the cockpit of its best machine is worth his life. Then, slowly, he starts to look. He listens to forbidden Western radio in the dark and hears a different version of the world. He watches the corruption up close, the senior officers who steal, the lies stacked on lies. He sees the empty shelves in the shops while the party bosses live like kings. The country he was told to worship turns out, when you look at it without propaganda, to be rotting from the inside. And then comes the thing he cannot unsee. April 1989. In Tbilisi, the capital of Soviet Georgia, a peaceful crowd gathers to protest. Soviet troops are sent in to clear them. What follows is a massacre. Soldiers attack unarmed civilians, many of them women, beating them with sharpened shovels and choking them with gas, and they kill them. And then, the state does what the state always does. It lies. It is called dead troublemakers and killers' heroes. A comrade shows Zuyev the photographs of what really happened, the bodies, the truth the newspapers refuse to print. And in that moment, the trap of his whole life snaps shut around him. Because here is the horror he understands instantly, looking at those images. He is a fighter pilot. He flies one of the most lethal ground attack machines on Earth. His unit could be the next one ordered into the sky over a city full of his own people. The next time a crowd fills a square, the command could come down the chain to him, to roll in low and rake them with cannon fire from above, to turn unarmed civilians into another set of photographs the state will lie about. He took an oath to defend these people. He was never supposed to be the weapon pointed at them. And he knows, with absolute certainty, that he will not do it. Not for any medal, not for any threat, not to save his own skin. Whatever else happens, he will not be the man who slaughters his own. So, a loyal officer makes a quiet, dangerous decision. He has to get out. He has to leave the Soviet Union. But there is no door. You do not simply resign from the Soviet military. He has already tried the one legal path, a medical discharge, and it was refused. There is no lawful way for him to walk out of this life. He buys himself a little time, and he travels home to say quite goodbye to the people he loves, telling no one why. And when he comes back to his base, he discovers the regime has moved first. Court-martial proceedings have been opened against him. The exit was just sealed, and the clock just started ticking. How does a watched man take down an armed military base, alone, without spilling a single drop of blood? And what do you plan when the only door out asks you to become the very thing you are running from? While he is awaiting court-martial, distrusted and watched, the base assigns him a new duty, controller of flight operations. The job that hands him a legitimate reason to be on the flight line, around the aircraft, at any hour of the day or night. They have handed the man planning to steal a jet the keys to the airfield. So, he builds a plan, and it is audacious to the point of madness. He will steal a MiG-29, not just any MiG-29, but one of the duty alert aircraft, the jets kept fueled, armed, and ready to launch at a moment's notice, and he will fly it across the border to Turkey, to the west. Then he counts the walls between himself and that jet, and there are a lot of them. An armed guard walks around the apron where the alert jets sit. A 12-man duty team sleeps nearby, men who can be awake and grabbing rifles in seconds, men who can drive trucks onto the runway to block it. There are armed alert pilots ready to scramble. There is a control tower which can raise the alarm to the whole district in one phone call. And because of Tbilisi, the entire base is on heightened alert. Everyone jumpier, everyone armed. And then there is the hardest wall of all. And this one, he builds himself. He refuses to kill anyone. Think about what that means. He is about to take on an armed military base, alone, and he has decided he will not spill blood to do it, because the whole reason he is leaving is that he will not become a murderer for the Soviet state, and he is not about to become one for himself on the way out the door. If he kills his comrades to escape, then the regime has already won. It has already turned him into the thing he is fleeing. That single rule makes everything 10 times harder. It would be easy to shoot a sleeping guard. It is nearly impossible to take an armed base without firing a shot. But that is the line, and the line is the whole point. So the plan must be bloodless, which means it must be ingenious. He will put everyone to sleep instead of killing them. He will jam the armory so the rifles stay locked away, and no one can use them on him or on anyone. He will steal the keys to the trucks so no one can roll a vehicle onto the runway to block his takeoff. He will cut the phones so the tower cannot call the alarm out to the district. Every obstacle gets a non-lethal answer. Nobody dies. In his perfect version, everybody simply wakes the next morning groggy and confused, with a pounding headache and one very expensive jet missing from the apron. But the sedative he has will not dissolve in liquid. So, he gets creative in the most disarming way imaginable. He bakes a cake, a strawberry cake, loaded with roughly 6 times a normal dose of sleeping drug, and he hides the whole scheme behind a fake celebration, a happy occasion, a treat for the duty crew. Who really suspects the man bringing dessert? He packs an escape kit, and he packs something else. The thing that turns a defection into a gift. Pages of his own hand-drawn notes on secret Soviet air combat tactics. Everything in his head about how the USSR plans to fight, to carry straight to the Americans. Fantasy is now in operation on a date. If a true story about one man against an impossible system is what you came here for, this channel hunts these stories down, and the subscribe button is how the next one reaches you, because the night Zuyev chose is about to come apart in his hands. The evening arrives. The cake goes out, and the plan cracks into reality. One of the alert pilots waved the cake away. He is on a diet. And then, worse, after the cake is already gone, a second armed pilot shows up to duty. 2 men with loaded pistols who are not going to fall asleep. What does a man do when the perfect plan has cracked on contact, with hours of darkness left and dawn coming fast? And what is the sound of a single phone ringing in a dormitory that was never on his map? Zuyev waits for the dead hours of the night, and then he goes to work, silent, methodical, and terrified. The armory first. He jams a file into the padlock and snaps it off inside the mechanism, so the rifles behind that door are now locked away from everyone, including the men who might use them on him. Then the vehicles. He pulls the keys from the fuel truck and from a van, the machines that could roll out and block his runway, and he drops them down a sewer where no one will find them before sunrise. Then, the tower. He finds the telephone lines that connect the base to the outside world and cuts them. And here is the discipline of the man. He does not just cut and run. He cuts, and then he waits, counting in the dark, listening for an alarm to come screaming back at him, because if cutting that line has tripped something, he needs to know now. Nothing comes. The silence holds. He moves to the dining hall to sever the last of the internal communications, snipping the wires one by one. And the very last wire he cuts sends a single soft chime ringing out from a dormitory phone he never knew existed, a connection his careful plan never accounted for. One small sound in silence. His heart stops. He stands frozen in the dark, pistol in hand, waiting to see if that one chime wakes the world, if a light flicks on, if a voice calls out. It doesn't. But it tells him the truth about his own plan. For all the months of preparation, he is improvising now, and his margin is paper thin. He is finding the holes in his own scheme one at a time, in the dark, with no way to fix the ones he has already fallen into. Every step forward reveals a new thing he did not foresee. The drugged men are finally under at last, deep asleep, slumped over the dining table exactly as he needed. But the cake never reached everyone. 2 armed pilots and 1 armed guard are still wide awake somewhere on this base between him and that jet, and through the windows the sky is sliding from black to gray. Dawn is coming, and with the daylight comes the shift change, and the whole base waking up. Time is gone. There is no more planning left to do. So, Aleksandr Zuyev cocks his pistol, and he walks out onto the apron toward the alert jets, toward the one guard standing between him and the aircraft that is his only way out of this life. The guard is a young man Zuyev knows and respects. He raises his weapon and gives the order, quietly, almost gently, "Put your hands up." For 1 second, everything hangs on whether this one man will simply obey. He doesn't. The guard lunges, and the one thing Zuyev's entire plan was built to avoid. The one line he swore he would not cross is now standing right in front of him with its hands around his throat. What does a man do when the one line he swore he would not cross is the only thing between him and the sky? And what does freedom cost when the only way to reach it runs through a body you swore you would never break? 2 men go down hard under the parked jets, grappling on the cold concrete in the half-dark. Both of them lose their grip on their guns. They trade brutal blows, fists and elbows, the guard shouting for help that could bring the whole base down on them. A knife comes out. They scramble across the ground for the dropped weapons, and a point-blank gunfight erupts between 2 men a few feet apart. Zuyev fires and hits the guard, who goes down. And in the same chaos, a rifle round punches straight through Zuyev's right arm, through the muscle, out the other side. Nearby, a bullet tears into a parked MiG, and jet fuel begins sheeting out across the concrete in the dark. A lake of fuel spreading around a coming gunfight. His pistol clicks empty. He is bleeding badly now, the blood running hot down his ruined right arm, the fingers going numb and useless, but the jet is right there, so close. He reaches the alert aircraft and starts tearing at the canvas covers, the protective sheaths that must come off the sensors before the jet can fly. But his arm stopped obeying him. One-handed, fading, he cannot finish the job. The covers over the airspeed sensor and the targeting system stay stubbornly in place. Understand what that does to him. It means that if he somehow gets this jet into the air, he will be flying half-blind. No reliable airspeed reading, the single most important number for taking off and landing. No working gun sight. He is about to attempt the most demanding flight of his life with the instruments he needs most simply gone, sealed under canvas. He no longer has the strength or the time to remove. There is no time to fix it. He drags himself up into the cockpit one-handed, drops into the seat, and hits the starter. A dead click. He hit it again, click, again, nothing. And here, this is the bottom, the moment everything in him collapses. He is certain he has failed. He believes the tower has already been radioed for help, and that soldiers are on their way. He thinks he has dropped his bag, the irreplaceable notes, the whole point of the risk, lost somewhere out on the tarmac. He is bleeding out in the seat of a stolen fighter that will not start, and he is sure he is about to die right here, having destroyed his life for nothing. And then at the very edge of despair, he finds his own mistake. The throttles. They are pulled all the way back to the full stop position, not set to idle where they need to be to start. Such a small thing. He shoves them forward, hits the starter again, and the engine catches and roars to life. The power cable still plugged into the jet rips free as the machine comes alive under him. He is moving. But the nightmare is not over, because he is about to attempt the impossible. He firewalls the throttles into afterburner and accelerates the runway, and he has no airspeed instrument to tell him how fast he is going. A fully fueled, missile-laden fighter jet needs to hit an exact speed to fly and lift off too early, and you stall back onto the concrete, too late, and you run out of runway and cartwheel into a fireball. He must guess by feel. By the seat of his pants and a lifetime of flying, he has to sense the precise instant to pull a blind jet into the air. He pulls, and the MiG claws off the ground and into the gray morning sky. He is flying, and now he faces the choice he came here to make. The plan, the revenge, the reckoning for Tbilisi, calls for him to turn this jet around and rake up the row of parked Soviet fighters with his cannon. What does a man do with the men who would have killed him lined up under his wings, and a boarder still ahead of him? And does the pilot who refused to kill on the ground become a killer in the air, with revenge one squeeze of a trigger away? He nearly dies in the first 30 seconds of the flight. He releases the belly fuel tank to lighten the jet, and the aircraft shudders to the very edge of a stall. The wings lost their grip on the air, the ground rushing up. He catches it, barely, hands and instinct saving a machine that should have fallen out of the sky. Then he steadies, climbs, and rolls in on the parked fighters below, lining up the long row of MiGs and the men around them in his sights, his thumb on the trigger. This is the moment. Revenge for the photographs. He squeezes the trigger. Nothing happens. The cannon does not fire. He squeezes again. Dead. The gun will not shoot, and he has no time to troubleshoot it. No time at all. So, he breaks off the attack, and as he passes the control tower, he rocks his wings, the pilot gesture of farewell, and he points the nose toward the border and runs. What follows is a desperate, low-level dash for Turkey, and it is a fight for his life the whole way. He flies at wave-top height to stay beneath the radar net, so low he has to haul the jet up and over power lines that appear out of nowhere, threading a multi-million-dollar fighter through obstacles at hundreds of miles an hour with one working arm and no airspeed gauge. Behind him, his own Air Force could already be scrambling to hunt him down, so he throws out chaff to blind any missile radar trying to lock on. He is a Soviet pilot now being chased by everything he ever trained besides. And over the Black Sea, the worst enemy of all arrives. The adrenaline that has carried him through the fight finally drains his body, and the blood loss catches up all at once. His vision grays at the edges and starts to close in like a tunnel. The horizon swims. He is sliding toward a blackout in the cockpit, and he knows that if he passes out now, even for a few seconds, there will be no splash anyone ever hears, just a fully fueled jet and an unconscious pilot vanishing into the sea. He holds it level by raw will, talking himself awake, refusing to let his own body finish what the bullet started. He makes it. He brings the jet down on a quiet runway in Turkey, armed, bleeding, alive, and he shouts out the one English phrase he rehearsed repeatedly for exactly this moment. He is out. He is free. And only later, safe, does he learn the truth about why his cannon did not fire. And it is the most important fact in the entire story. The gun was not broken. The master arm switch, the one that brings the weapons online, had been hidden from him. The Soviet system, in its endless box ticking, had bolted an anti-glare curtain over part of the cockpit panel as a matter of regulation. And in the chaos and the blood and the half-dark, that curtain had covered the very switch he needed. He never armed the gun, because the regime's own pointless bureaucracy had hidden it from him. Sit with what that means. The same incompetent, rotten system he was risking his life to escape is the only reason he did not slaughter 12 men on that tarmac. He flew out with clean hands, and not by discipline alone. He stayed human because the broken machine he hated failed one last time, even at the simple task of letting him take his revenge. He got out without becoming a murderer. That was always the real escape. But the story does not end on a clean triumph, because triumphs rarely are. The jet he risked everything to steal, the precious secret MiG-29 the whole West wanted to examine, is handed straight back to Moscow within a day. Turkey, wanting no quarrel with the Soviet Union over an aircraft, simply returns it. The great theft that the title promised you is, in the end, almost entirely undone. The plane goes home. The plane was never really his to keep. So, what did Aleksandr Zuyev actually escape with after all of it? Not the jet, never jet. He escaped with himself, with his own life and his own conscience intact, and with the secrets locked in his head, the hand-drawn tactics and the hard knowledge of how the Soviet Air Force thought and fought, all of it carried west in the mind of one man. The aircraft was only ever the vehicle. The man was the prize. And the cost of that was everything else he had. He can never go home again. Not to Volga, not to his country, not to the only world he had ever known. The state brands him a criminal, a hijacker, a traitor, and back home his name becomes a curse. He has traded his entire life, every friend, every familiar street, every certainty, for a runway in a foreign country and an uncertain future among the people he was raised to call the enemy. The guard he shot on the tarmac would survive. Zuyev left that base having taken not a single life, exactly as he had sworn. His mother and brother eventually managed to reach him in Virginia, half a world from where he was born. And there, in a quiet American living room, on his own television set, Aleksandr Zuyev watches the Soviet Empire, the colossus that raised him and nearly turned him into a murderer, crack apart and collapse into nothing, just 2 years after he risked everything to escape it. The whole monstrous system he could not legally walk out of simply ceased to exist. He helps the West understand the force he came from. He tells his story. And then, years after surviving the single most dangerous night of the Cold War, after beating an entire military base with a cake and a pistol and his own nerve, Aleksandr Zuyev is killed in an ordinary small plane crash. Remember what the title promised you: a daring theft, a clever pilot who drugged a base and stole a jet. But that was never what this was about. This was the story of a man who chose to risk death rather than become a killer, whose flawless plan survived only through a cascade of failures and one final absurd accident of the system he despised. The drugged base and the stolen jet were never the point. Staying human was. If this story keeps you up, there's another one that will finish the job. A 34-year-old Jewish Soviet lieutenant arrived at one of the deadliest extermination camps in Nazi-occupied Poland and decided the only door out ran through its own SS officers, lured 11 of them one at a time into the workshops on the pretext of new uniforms and finished boots, killed them in silence with axes, and ran 300 starving men through a minefield while the towers had orders to shoot anything that moved. That video is on screen now.